call upon God's name, and on my own. I call upon God's name, and on my own. I call upon God's name, and on my own. I call upon God's name, and on my own. You know, as part of the family of God, we can call on God's name. When we're calling on God's name, we're calling on the entirety of God's name, which is everything that is, all reality. We're calling on ourselves in that. Okay, I call upon God's name, and on my own. We need to think a lot higher of ourselves, our true identities, than what we generally give ourselves credit for. And I'm Miracle Willie, forgiveness teacher from the Ozarks, here on Monday, July the 1st of 2024. Halfway through the year, today. We're reading from the Foundation for Inner Peace version of A Course in Miracles, the edited version, probably the most edited version of all the versions that are available. I like to think of it as kind of like the primer. It's like, get you the essentials. 183. Let's read it together. And I'm Miracle Willie, forgiveness teacher from the Ozarks. And I'm sitting here under a walnut tree on my place. I call upon God's name and on my own. God's name is holy, but no holier than yours. To call upon his name is but to call upon your own. A father gives his son his name and thus identifies the son with him. His brothers share his name, and thus are they united in a bond to which they turn for their identity. Your father's name reminds you who you are, even within a world that does not know, even though you have not remembered it. God's name cannot be heard without response, nor said without an echo in the mind that calls you to remember. Say his name and you invite the angels to Say his name and you invite the angels to surround the ground on which you stand and sing to you as they spread out their wings to keep you safe and shelter you from every worldly thought that would intrude upon your holiness. Those angels are going to shelter us from every worldly thought that would intrude upon our holiness. Repeat God's name, and all the world responds by laying down illusions. Every dream the world holds dear has suddenly gone by, and where it seemed to stand, you find a star, a miracle of grace. The sick arise, healed of their sickly thoughts. The sick arise, no sick no more, because they've accepted God's authority, his reality, his name. The sick arise. And why were they sick? Because they had sickly thoughts. But as they get their thoughts straightened out, they arise. The sick arise, healed of their sickly thoughts. The blind can see and deaf can hear. The sorrowful cast off their mourning, and the tears of pain are dried as happy laughter comes to bless the world. Wow, that's what we want, that happy laughter to come to bless our world. Repeat the name of God, and little names have lost their meaning. Repeat the name of God, and little names have lost their meaning. No temptation but becomes a nameless and unwanted thing before God's name. Repeat his name, and see how easily you will forget the names of all the gods you valued. They have lost the name of God you gave them. They become anonymous and valueless to you, although before you let the name of God replace their little names. You stood before them worshipfully, naming them as gods. See if we can get that. I'd like to keep the view of just the natural world as much as possible. Let's read that last sentence again. Repeat God's name and see how easily you will forget the names of all the gods you valued. They have lost the name of God you gave them. They become anonymous and valueless to you. Although before you let the name of God replace their little names, you stood before them worshipfully, naming them as gods. Repeat the name of God and call upon yourself, whose name is His. Repeat His name, and all the tiny nameless things on earth slip into right perspective. Those who call upon the name of God cannot mistake the nameless for the name, nor sin for grace, nor bodies for the Holy Son of God. And should you join a brother as you sit with him in silence and repeat God's name along with him within your quiet mind, you have established there an altar which reaches to God Himself and to His Son. Practice but this today. Repeat God's name slowly again and still again. Become oblivious to every name but His. Hear nothing else. Let all your thoughts become anchored on this. No other word we use except at the beginning when we say today's idea but once. I call upon God's name and on my own. And then go into the wordless place where we identify with our true heritage, God. It's wordless though, remember that. Let all your thoughts become anchored on this. Practice but this today. Repeat God's name slowly again and still again. Become oblivious to every name but His. Hear nothing else. Let all your thoughts become anchored on this. No other word we use except at the beginning when we say today's idea but once. I call upon God's name and on my own. And then God's name becomes our only thought, our only word, the only thing that occupies our minds, the only wish we have, the only sound with any meaning, and the only name of everything that we desire to see, of everything that we would call our own. Thus do we give an invitation which can never be refused, and God will come and answer it Himself. Think not He hears the little prayers of those who call on Him with names of idols cherished by the world. They cannot reach Him thus. He cannot hear requests that He be not Himself, or that His Son receive another name than His. The opposite of sin is grace. Let us see grace and not guilt in our brothers and sisters. And by doing that, we're identifying with the one name. Repeat God's name and you acknowledge Him as sole creator of reality. And you acknowledge also that His Son is part of Him creating in His name. Sit silently and let His name become the all-encompassing idea that holds your mind completely. Sit silently and let His name become the all-encompassing idea that holds your mind completely. Let all thoughts be still except this one, and to all other thoughts respond with this, and see God's name replace the 1,000 little names you gave your thoughts, not realizing that there is one name for all there is, and all that there will be. So there's just one name for everything, and it's the thought of God. Let's identify that God is everywhere present. Today you can achieve a state in which you will experience the gift of grace. Wow, all those little superficial gods, those idols that we've been worshiping, thinking they would bring us joy, let's just see it in the grace of God, in the goodness of God, in the name of God. That's where all our oneness, our joy of oneness lies. Today you can achieve a state in which you will experience the gift of grace. You can escape all bondage of the world and give the world the same release you found. You can remember what the world forgot and offer it your own remembering. You can accept today the part you play in its salvation and your own as well, and both can be accomplished perfectly. Turn to the name of God for your release, and it is given you. Turn to the name of God for your release, and release is given you. No prayer but this is necessary, for it holds them all within it. Words are insignificant, and all requests unneeded when God's Son calls on his Father's name. And he says that words are needless. So don't try to think of a word. I still kind of get a little, this is one of my harder lessons, I'll tell you, because I keep wanting to put a word there. You know, whether it's Yahweh or Jehovah or I am that I am, or Jesus or Christ or something. But he says it's wordless. We just identify with the name as the family that we're one with. Turn to the name of God for your release, and it is given you. No prayer but this is necessary, for it holds them all within it. Words are insignificant, and all requests unneeded when God's Son calls on his Father's name. His Father's thoughts become his own. Wow, that's what we want. We want our Father's thoughts. That's what happens when you call on the name of God. You get his thoughts. Thoughts of grace instead of thoughts of sin. Instead of thoughts of the ego, thoughts of the Holy Spirit. His Father's thoughts become his own. He makes his claim to all his Father gave, is giving still, and will forever give. He calls on him to let all things he thought he made be nameless now, and in their place the holy name of God becomes his judgment of their worthlessness. All little things are silent, little sounds are soundless now. The little things of earth have disappeared. The universe consists of nothing but the Son of God, who calls upon his Father, and his Father's voice gives answer in his Father's holy name. In this eternal, still relationship in which communication far transcends all words, and yet exceeds in depth and height whatever words could possibly convey, is peace eternal. There's the name of God, wordless in the peace eternal. In our Father's name we would experience this peace today, and in his name it shall be given us in the oneness of God's love. I call upon God's name, God's identity, God's love, and on my own love, my own identity, that God has made me one with him. Okay, now let's go look in our text reading. And we're in chapter 19, the Attainment of Peace. And we've been going through the section 4, which is the obstacles to peace. And the obstacles the obstacles to peace. And we read the first one, the first obstacle, A, the desire to get rid of peace. And then B, we did, was the second obstacle, the belief the body is valuable for what it offers. And now today, C, the third obstacle, the attraction of death. Okay, well, we'll look at that in just a moment. While we're turning there, what all's going on around the world, from holidays and observances and Drexel University religious calendar. American Zoo Day. Might be a nice day to go to the zoo. Canada Day. Creative Ice Cream Day. Devotion to Duty Day. Let's be vigilant only for God and his kingdom. Let's be devoted to that duty. Let's keep our perspective right and call only on God's name and no idols. Nothing to bring us joy except our oneness with love, with our Creator, with God. Devotion to Duty Day. Early Bird Day. Hey, early bird gets the worm. Esther Lauder Day. International Joke Day. International Joke Day. Yeah. Say something to make someone laugh today. International Reggae Day. Financial Freedom Day. And you know, the best way to live financially free is to live simple. You know, more is less. So learn to live simple and have all the abundance you want. It's a freeing to the spirit too. to live simple. Postal Workers Day, Television Heritage Day, Resolution Renewal Day. That'd be because we're second half of the year day. You did some kind of nice, commitment on the new year perhaps. Give it another charge today. Get a new vigor in doing what you thought was worthwhile then and still be worthwhile now, okay? Postage Stamp Day and Zip Code Day. And then out of our edible landscaping, we're going to look at the other Hascap berry, which is an edible honeysuckle. And this is the solo edible honeysuckle. And it's a Lonicera. I think that's how to pronounce it for the genus. And the species is a cross between Cerulean and an Amphilocalyx. Amphilocalyx. I think that'd be right. The solo edible honeysuckle, and it says of the solo, the bushes are pretty, compact, with an extended blooming period. The flowers bloom later than other popular varieties, which is a plus for areas of fluctuating winter temperatures. Maxie needs to be pollinated by Solo. Solo is our first edible honeysuckle that is self-fertile, but the fruits are twice the size if pollinated. Space 3-foot circle, zones 3 through 8. Okay, well, have you two varieties there. They pollinate each other and make them bigger. And our word for peace today will be out of the Bangi language, or Bombangi, it's also known as, in the Congo. And I'm thinking that the pronunciation is NyiEe, or NyiEe, NyiEe. Let's go with NyiEe and see if we can say that again later. NyiEe. N-Y-I-E-E. And that second to last E was capitalized. Okay, let's do our reading. The third obstacle, the attraction of death. To you and your brother, in whose special relationship the Holy Spirit entered, it is given to release and be released from the dedication to death. For it was offered you and you accepted. Yet you must learn still more about this strange devotion, for it contains the third obstacle that peace must flow across. No one can die unless he chooses death. What seems to be the fear of death is really its attraction. Wow, that's a mind blower, isn't it? But I trust Jesus so much because everything he's ever said to me makes sense after I understood it. So I just accept him on faith until I can get my attention up to where he's got his. What seems to be the fear of death is really its attraction. Guilt too is feared and fearful, yet it could have no hold at all except on those who are attracted to it and seek it out. So guilt and death, they're fearful, but we're attracted to that fear. We think we want to see sin and death. And so it is with death. I begin on it. Guilt too is feared and fearful, yet it could have no hold at all except on those who are attracted to it and seek it out. And so it is with death. Maybe by the ego, it's made by the ego. Its dark shadow falls across all living things because the ego is the enemy of life. And that word enemy is in quotes because it's not really a true enemy. It's just a perceived one from our upside down perspective. 2. And yet a shadow cannot kill. What is a shadow to the living? They but walk past and it is gone. But what of those whose dedication is not to live? The black-draped sinners. The ego's mournful chorus, plodding so heavily away from life, dragging their chains and marching in the slow procession that honors their grim master, Lord of Death. Touch any one of them with the gentle hands of forgiveness and watch the chains fall away along with yours. See him throw aside the black robe he was wearing to his funeral and hear him laugh at death. The sentence sin would lay upon him, he can escape through your forgiveness. This is no arrogance, it is the will of God. What is impossible to you who chose his will as yours? What is death to you? It's just a joke here on International Joke Day. This is no arrogance. It is the will of God. What is impossible to you who chose his will as yours? What is death to you? Your dedication is not to death, nor to its master. When you accepted the Holy Spirit's purpose in place of the ego's, you renounced death, exchanging it for life. We know that an idea leaves not its source. We know that an idea leaves not its source. And death is the result of the thought we call the ego, as surely as life is the result of the thought of God. I call upon God's name and on my own. Okay, and let's read the first maybe couple, 2 or 3 paragraphs of this next section. I, the incorruptible body. From the ego came sin and guilt and death in opposition to life and innocence and to the will of God himself. Where can such opposition lie but in the sick minds of the insane, dedicated to madness and set against the peace of heaven? One thing is sure, God, who created neither sin nor death, wills not that you be bound by sin or death. He knows of neither sin nor its results, which would be the result of sin is death. But it's only in a make-believe. Because he's saying he knows of neither sin nor its results. The shrouded figures in the funeral procession march not in honor of their Creator, whose will it is they live. They are not following his will. They are opposing it. Paragraph 4. And what is the black draped body they would bury? A body which they dedicated to death, a symbol of corruption, a sacrifice to sin, offered to sin to feed upon and keep itself alive, a thing condemned, damned by its maker and lamented by every mourner who looks upon it as himself. You who believe you have condemned the Son of God to this are arrogant, but you who would release him are but honoring the will of his Creator. Wow. We want to honor the will of our Creator and not see our brothers and sisters as sinless. But you who release him are but honoring the will of his Creator. The arrogance of sin, the pride of guilt, the sepulcher of separation, all are part of your unrecognized dedication to death. The glitter of guilt you laid upon the body would kill it. For what the ego loves, it kills for its obedience. But what obeys it not, it cannot kill. And I think we'll read one more paragraph and we'll call it good. You have another dedication that would keep the body incorruptible and perfect as long as it is useful for your holy purpose. The body no more dies than it can feel. It does nothing of itself. It is neither corruptible nor incorruptible. It is nothing. It is the result of a tiny, mad idea of corruption that can be corrected. And a tiny, mad idea is all the body is. A tiny, mad idea of corruption that can be corrected. For God has answered this insane idea with his own, an answer which left him not, and therefore brings the Creator to the awareness of every mind which heard his answer and accepted it. Okay. You who are, let me read just a little bit more. Do we have time? Yeah. You who are dedicated to the incorruptible have been given, through your acceptance, the power to release from corruption. What better way to teach the first and fundamental principle in A Course on Miracles than by showing you the one that seems to be the hardest can be accomplished first? The body can but serve your purpose. As you look on it, so will it seem to be. Death, were it true, would be the final and complete disruption of communication, which is the ego's goal. So he's basically saying the first thing we're going to learn in our practice in miracles is that what we thought was the hardest one to accomplish would be the first one. We'll recognize there is no death. There is no death. All those that you thought died, they haven't died. Look again. We live in the resurrected world. The resurrection and the life. Okay, well, be sure to do your 2 extended periods of practice today. For 5 minutes or so, or longer, and every hour of the day, bring this idea to your mind. I call upon God's name, and on my own, I call upon God's name, and on my own, I call upon God's name, and on my own, I call upon God's name, and on my own. God's name, and on my own, I call upon God's name, and on my own, I call upon God's name, and on my own, I call upon God's name, and on my own. So go into the silence. He says, say it but once. I call upon God's name and on my own. And then let your mind be still and quiet. And if it does get distracted, well, then say the lesson again. I call upon God's name and on my own. And come back to that center. And then be just resting in the abode of love, the abode of peace, the abode of deathlessness, the abode of guiltlessness, the abode of sinlessness, the name of God, which is also yours as part of the family of God. I call upon God's name and on my own. And we'll go with NyiEe. NyiEe. We'll try that. For the Bangi word for peace, NyiEe. I call upon God's name and on my own. NyiEe.